was a pickpocket who thought that anything was better than prison. Little did he know what he'd escaped from wasn't half as strange or frightening as what he'd stumbled into.
I do not believe what I believe, Lord. These are magical, unexplainable matters, and I beg you not to make me a part of them.
The knight who had saved him wanted only two things: to free his lover and to take his revenge.
I have waited almost 2 years for a sign from God.
Sir, the truth is I talk to God all the time. And no offense, but he never mentioned you.
The pickpocket was the key to his plan. But would you send a thief to guard your treasure? He was the last one in the world to act like a hero. It just happened by itself. And he was drawn into a magical, romantic adventure. Matthew Broderick, Michelle Pfeiffer, Rutger Hauer, Ladyhawke.
The 80s in particular were a decade that gave us innumerable fantasy-based movies. These included the eclectic Time Bandits, Excalibur, Clash of the Titans, Dragon Slayer, of course the Conan movies, not to mention Beastmaster, The Last Unicorn, The Sword and the Sorcerer, Krull, and the animated Fire and Ice. My enthusiasm I can't contain because these are among some of our most precious commodities if you're a fan of fantasy. Swords and sorcery, thieves, bards, wizards, kings, evil plans, castles, fantastic beasts, and all of them rolled up into a compelling story full of archetypes we could all identify with. Today we're going to be looking at Richard Donner's troubled, although brilliant production of a movie called Ladyhawke. Now, if you know that name, Richard Donner, that's because he directed a slew of box office successes, including Superman, multiple Lethal Weapon movies, not to mention the creepy as hell, The Omen. You know, just as an aside, Patrick Troughton, otherwise known as the second Doctor Who, was in The Omen. How did I not know that until just now? Ladyhawke was released in 1985 after a long effort by Donner to get the film made. Initially, it was the Fox Studios that greenlit the production, with Kurt Russell in the role of the male protagonist alongside Michelle Pfeiffer. The role of Gaston, the pickpocket, was initially set to be Sean Penn and not Matthew Broderick. It was during rehearsals that Kurt Russell decided to pull out of the production, and he was replaced by none other than Rutger Hauer, most notably in the original Blade Runner. At the time of its release, reviews were mixed. However, Siskel and Ebert both gave it a thumbs up. Now that may be an outdated reference, but at the time in the 80s, what Siskel and Ebert said had a big impact. The critics were none too pleased with Matthew Broderick's performance, which, let's be honest, was more of an 80s take than an actual in the vibe or in the era type of sword and sorcery character response that you would expect. Despite its box office lackluster performance, Ladyhawke was in fact nominated for 2 Academy Awards, including Best Sound Effects and Best Sound. At its heart, Ladyhawke is your quintessential fantasy genre love story. 2 lovers damned by an evil villain to spend their lives separated from each other by an evil curse. Rutger Hauer plays Navarre, the former captain of the guard of Aquila. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Isabella of Anjou. Matthew Broderick plays Gaston, a young thief who inadvertently gets mixed up in what is Navarre's quest to evade the evil bishop's men and to try and find some way to rid himself and Isabella of the evil curse that keeps them separated. That curse results in During the night, Navarre is transformed into a wolf, while during the day, Isabella is transformed into a hawk. Thus, at no time are they ever allowed to be in each other's presences in human form. There's a flicker of transition, a flicker of recognition, only at the briefest of moments, at dawn or dusk. This is the stuff of true fantasy genre greatness. What made Ladyhawke different, and maybe stumble at the box office? Now, looking at the literature and the history that surrounds this movie, it would appear that it had to do with trying to get the right A-list cast in place. As we mentioned, Kurt Russell was cast by Fox to originally play Navarre. However, Donner originally wanted Sean Connery to play the character, but that didn't pan out. Now, as wild as it may to believe, Michelle Pfeiffer in 1985 was a relative unknown. Ladyhawke was her follow-up to the movie Scarface. Now, quite obviously, going from Scarface and playing the coke-addled girlfriend of Tony Montana to then play in a period/fantasy piece like Ladyhawke is a hell of a jump. So how did Donner manage to get something resembling an A-list cast? Well, it was through the casting of Matthew Broderick, who in 1984 had released a huge blockbuster movie that I actually saw in the theater twice, War Games. Now, while none of it was Richard Donner's fault, the studio actually mismanaged the release of the film to such an extent where Police Academy 2 and the movie The Mask beat Ladyhawke handily. It was perhaps the largest flop of Donner's career up until that point. Luckily, of course, we all know he bounced back and made a little movie, which just happens to be an icon of 80s filmography, The Goonies. So where does that leave us? Almost 40 years later. Ladyhawke is one of those cult 80s, I would call it an A movie that just did not get the appreciation that it deserves. Would this movie have done better with an A-list cast, with someone like Kurt Russell? I gotta tell you, I just don't see Kurt Russell in this. Rutger Hauer is the character Navarre. He owns it. However, I will fault Donner for this. His obsession at the time with the Alan Parsons Project led to a rather problematic film score. Within the context of a fantasy film, it was not the right choice. Now, other roundabout criticism of the soundtrack aside, Ladyhawke is a fantastic movie. Who knows? Would Ladyhawke have been up there in the rarefied air of Conan with a different soundtrack? Maybe. But as it is a true piece of 80s iconography, reflecting the music, the times, and the method of filmmaking that was uniquely Richard Donner. Now again, this is a relatively simple story. However, in that simplicity, it was the characterization in the plot and the way it moved that made it so memorable. The cinematography throughout Ladyhawke is breathtaking, especially the use of light, considering the importance within the plot around the characters of Navarre and Isabella. When Navarre goes from being a wolf to being a man, and Isabella transforms from being a hawk to being a woman, use of that light at dusk and dawn to show their emotion and it's absolutely beautiful. Rutger Hauer's portrayal of the flawed yet heroic and honor-bound Navarre is incredibly memorable. And if you can get past the Matthew Broderick occasionally jarring 80isms, he's a pretty damn decent character as well. Michelle Pfeiffer is perfect, elegant, brave, and exceptionally beautiful as Isabel. Alfred Molina nails it. The hallmark of any good fantasy movie is the final climactic or boss battle. In this, Donner absolutely delivered. Rutger Hauer, in his character of Navarre, has to go through all of the big bad's henchmen. It is brutal, chaotic, and amazing to watch that fight scene. Obviously, I'm not going to give the ending away, but I will say this, it's incredibly satisfying. Now, there have been those that say Ladyhawke is too of a 1980s movie. Well, I was there, and I can tell you, despite not being a perfect movie, Ladyhawke is the perfect fantasy movie of its time for the story it wanted to tell. And that is why Ladyhawke gets my unreserved recommendation. Please go ahead, check it out. It's available for rent on just about any type of streaming service you have available. But as I like to do, I recommend buying it from the secondary market, such as eBay, on physical media. Owning physical media allows you to have the unaltered, uncensored, unadulterated version of entertainment that you saw perhaps years ago, or maybe even just a few months ago. And you won't wake up one day soon to find that that movie has been changed or suddenly got a moral outrage statement in front of it because it's not current year politics. Or worse, the movie has been deleted entirely. Ladyhawke by Richard Donner. Give it a look. Until next time, I'm Corey B., and you have been listening to Salty Salish Sea. Have a good one. It really helps small independent content creators like myself when you like, subscribe, and share the videos. If you've liked what you've been seeing from me, please consider subscribing or giving a thumbs up or leaving a comment below. Thanks.